Today's speakers are Alyssa Roth and Abigail Shingler. Alyssa and Abigail are with the Region of Waterloo's Source Water Protection Plan program. They spend much of their time working with commercial properties to find solutions to protect the quality of our drinking water. This includes winter maintenance plans that balance the application of de-icing salt while keeping winter safety a priority. Today's webinar includes a lot of great tips on preparing your commercial property for winter. First off, I would like to hand things over to Colleen Brown. Colleen works for the Region of Waterloo, talking to community groups and protecting our sources of drinking water. Colleen, over to you.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for everyone for joining us today. Before passing it over to Alyssa and Abigail, I'd like to share some background information to help provide context to the presentation. There are many tools your winter maintenance team might need to use when dealing with different weather conditions. This includes salt and ice melter products. Salt is a great tool for dealing with the ice. It is typically easier to source and more economical to purchase compared to other ice melter products. Salt also demonstrates your due diligence to address liability concerns and is a visible reminder to your staff and visitors that your winter maintenance team is doing their job to keep the area safe. But are there negative impacts to using salt? Salt is a chemical creating problems for our urban and natural environments. For your businesses, salt can be damaging to landscapes, bricks, concrete, sidewalks, doorways, and flooring. And this can mean added repair costs. Salt is also a major water quality concern in Waterloo Region. Our community depends on groundwater for our drinking water, and when we put salt on the ground, it doesn't go away. Salt stays in the environment and can seep into the ground where it mixes with groundwater. It's also important to understand that current water and wastewater treatment does not remove salt from water. Removing salt during treatment is an energy-intensive and expensive process. So here we have a map of Waterloo Region. The dots on the map represent the well fields the Region of Waterloo manages. The colors of the dots represent levels of chloride from salt in the groundwater at each well field. The Ontario drinking water objective for chloride is 250 milligrams per liter. This is when a salt taste is detectable. The small green dots represent wells with little or no chloride, and the larger orange and red dots represent wells with chloride levels near or exceeding the 250 mark. This map from 1973 shows most of the wells as green dots and well below the level of concern. Now let's fast forward to 2020. For 2020, you can see the increased number of orange and red dots in the urban areas. Most of the urban wells are now near or exceeding the Ontario drinking water objective for chloride. In fact, salt is now a major water quality concern in Waterloo Region. To expand on that, the color areas on this map represent Waterloo Region's population growth in 1950. Sorry, so the map is moved forward. So you can see how as it goes through the different slides, that it's expanding. And as we move through those years, we can see how our population is growing. And with this growth comes more paved areas that we need to salt. So what can we do about this? We need to think about winter maintenance differently. Commercial properties near municipal wells may need to follow a winter maintenance risk management plan per the Clean Water Act. The plan includes actions to reduce salt use while keeping winter safety a priority. I'm now going to pass it over to Alyssa and Abigail, who will share helpful tips and resources to include as part of your winter maintenance plan.
So as was discussed, salt is a big concern for our environment. And Abby and I are going to be focusing on options for improving site safety, while also using salt more efficiently on site. So a number of the steps that we're going to talk about today revolve around a site walk around to plan a winter maintenance strategy. So a winter maintenance strategy can be as simple as a site plan. So here is an example on this slide. This is a very simple one. but you can see it shows all of the winter maintenance characteristics. So even though it's simple, it can be very effective as long as all the information is included in the map. So while walking the site, some things to think about are good locations to pile snow, where salt is going to be applied and by who. So the contractor may be applying salt on the parking lots, and then internal staff may be applying on walkways. What the predominant wind direction is on the site, and whether that's creating predominant areas of drifting snow. And also whether there's any salt bins, you can mark those as well. And areas that are not needed can be closed during the winter and included on the site map. So many properties may have an existing site map that includes helpful property information. So this can be a good start to a winter maintenance plan, but if one doesn't exist, you can also add in property information to a map similar to the one that we saw on the last slide. So site characteristics to talk about while on a site walk around include roof drainage, so where downspouts are directed to grade, and also locations for internal roof overflow. Also areas to keep clear, such as loading docks and fire routes, where parking areas are, and any priority areas within them, as well as walkways. So the main way that people are walking through the site. Also thinking about drainage. So if there's any catch basins on site or other stormwater management infrastructure that's removing runoff from the property, those will be important for how water is flowing on site, and also the general slope of the property. Ponding water is also important to note because these areas can freeze and then create ice hazards. When you're walking around your site, important things to keep in mind are to include everyone who has a role in winter maintenance. So your contractor is a good resource to include in the site meeting. They also may encourage a site meeting. It's a good process to get everyone on the same page for winter maintenance, and just make sure that expectations are clear for what their role is as well. And that's something that we've heard from contractors when talking about good salt use. So this site map can be used year to year. It's not a one and done type of activity. So every year refreshing what happens for winter maintenance on site. Also, if there's staff turnover or if there's a new contractor, it's a good starting point to think about how winter maintenance is happening. And then if something's not happening on site, it can be useful for identifying what those are and then coming up with a different strategy to have an effective plan. All right, so ice is a safety issue. When we're out talking about salt, using salt effectively, that's the biggest priority that we hear is site safety. And that's also our priority as well here at the region, as well as making sure that we're not exposing anyone to any additional liability. So areas where we can remove ice hazards from site are an easy win because they won't need to be treated with salt, and it's also making sure that the site is safe. So one thing to look for is areas of pooling water, or you also just may know where hotspots are for ice on your property. So these areas are important to note because you can come up with a strategy to either remove the areas or come up with a strategy to prevent the ice from happening in the first place. All right, so when we're talking about ice hazards and parking lots, you are again looking for areas of ponding water. So in the winter, these areas are created from weather that's warmer during the day and then cold at night. Also from winter rain, which we've been seeing more of over the last couple of years. And then also from asphalt warming up during the day and melting snow and ice that's on it, even if the air temperature is below 0. So this water will run to the low areas of the property and freeze. And so it's important to think about in terms of how to reduce where it's pooling. So ice formation of parking lots depends on slope, where catch basins are. Again, anything that's removing the runoff from the site is good because then it won't be sitting. And thinking about high traffic areas. So these are the priority areas that we want to keep clear of ice. Right, so here we have some examples of ponding water. The first example on the left, this is a relatively large parking lot and it doesn't have any catch basins. So you can see the slope is directed to this corner in this grassy area. And there's also some water ponding on the parking lot as well. So this is how the site's designed. There's not many options for removing this area of ponding water. A catch basin can be added, but that's a very expensive solution. So some winter maintenance options would be to use this area for a snow storage area or to close the area to public access. And we talk about that in upcoming slides. And then you can also see that there's been some crack repair at the front of the photo. And this is important just to make sure that water's flowing again the way it was designed. And also water will get into the cracks and freeze and then expand the cracks. So early maintenance is also cost effective and better for the site. Also for plowing, if it's plowing over a cracked surface, sometimes the blade can jump and leave behind snow, and then that turns to ice when cars drive over it or if people are walking over it. Right, and then on the photo on the right, we can see an area of ponding water. This is in a high traffic area, kind of right in front of a front entrance. So this would be a priority for spot treatment to make sure that the area is safe. And it isn't a potential for a slip and fall. So this property had planned paving work that was coming up, and filling this hole was included in the scope of that work. And so moving forward, this will no longer be an area of ponding water. So they've removed the ice hazard from the site. And then if pavement repairs weren't planned, it'd just be important to come up with a plan for treating the area so that it's not an ice hazard. When you're thinking about proper drainage on site, it's important to document ice hazard areas. And this is helpful if there is a slip and fall claim. You'll have records of how often salt was put down on the area, if the contractor needed to be called an additional time in order to come and treat the salt or treat the icy area. Again, thinking about regular maintenance of the parking area and making sure that cracks are repaired and potholes filled. And then also just general maintenance. So looking at catch basins and making sure that they've been cleaned out before the winter will help with drainage as well. So similar to parking areas, we want to think about roof drainage. When we're thinking about roof drainage, we want to encourage proper drainage and also identify areas where hazards could form. So here we have a short video clip about ice forming around downspouts and a preventative solution.
Here's a commercial property with a parking lot, several entrances, sidewalks, and landscaping. Start by walking around your property with your winter maintenance team. You can do this at any time, but a rainy day reveals how water flows, pools, and puddles on your property. Here's a classic example of water pouring from a downspout. The same water that turns to ice when the temperature hits zero. You can prevent this by directing the flow away from paved areas and by keeping the east troughs clear and in good repair. Otherwise, we risk a slip and fall and need a lot of salt.
All right, so as was shown in the video, shifting downspouts from a paved area to a landscaped area is a great approach to prevent ice formation. If this isn't an option, downspouts can also be directed to a lower traffic area or maybe an area with better drainage, such as with a catch basin. Also, you don't need to move the entire downspout. Sometimes an extender is enough in order to direct the water to a better area. So here we have a real world example of a roof drain draining onto grade. And this is probably a worst case scenario. So the roof drain is directed right in front of the front entrance. And you can see some snow here, but there's also a white residue. And this residue is left behind from salt use. And this type of really thin ice that spread over a large area is particularly slippery and could cause a hazard in a slip and fall. So it's likely that this area is treated very often with salt. So there may be higher service costs of the contractor needing to continually return to the site to put down more salt and make sure it's safe. This is also a retirement community, so there's heightened concerns around accessibility for people coming and going. So it's really a cost-benefit analysis in terms of whether to move the downspout and thinking about the cost to move the downspout versus safety concerns, and as well as extra costs for extra maintenance year to year. So similar to parking lots, doing regular maintenance on infrastructure is important. So during the site walk around, if you see eaves that are twisted or leaking, they may be a priority for repair work. And that would just help prevent ice formation. So anything to encourage good drainage is important. So also clearing out the eaves and also looking to see if there's anything blocking internal drainage from the roof as well. If ice dams are an ongoing concern at your building, some heating cables are an option to help promote flow. Also recording how frequently ice forms around downspouts and how often salt is applied can help show your due diligence if there is a slip and fall, and can help inform whether a more permanent solution, such as shifting the downspout, is warranted. Right, so just a quick note about drifting snow. This is something where if you're walking your site or if you're on site regularly and you have an area that always has drifts, you can think about a more permanent solution, such as planting trees or shrubs to block the wind from moving across the site. Or you can also use a snow fence just during the winter. So this may be something to talk about your contractor with, whether it's feasible for your site and different ways of doing it, or whether there's a need to stop drifting areas of snow. We also have lots of resources available if you're looking to inform people that, you know, it is winter, we have slippery and icy conditions. So we have some window or door clings on the left of the side. And then also making sure that people are dressed properly for winter. So including wearing proper footwear. So there's a poster of that at the top. And then we also have salt bin stickers, which you can put on salt bins on your property. And it just talks about how to use salt, like what the best practices are and when. And these resources are available on our website, and the link will be added into the chat or the description.
Great, thanks, Alyssa. So just moving on to snow storage. So planning where your contractor stores snow on your property is important for multiple reasons, such as accessibility, parking, stormwater management, site functionality, and infrastructure protection. So depending where snow is stored on your property, it can start to cause issues. So when designating an area, the most ideal location is on a paved surface on the low side of the property in close proximity to some sort of drainage point, and most commonly this is a catch basin. So we can see in this snow storage example here, we have the snow stored on pavement draining directly into that catch basin there, so that's great. But alternatively, looking at a less ideal snow storage location, we can see these melts starting to run across the parking lot, which, as Alyssa had mentioned, has the potential to cause ice hazards. So this snow storage location is on the higher side of the property. So we see that melt running across the high traffic area, the parking lot, and then it's actually pooling around the catch basin rather than draining through it. So that melt and freeze around the catch basin will start to cause damage over time, which would result in a costly repair. So while storing snow on paved surfaces can result in ice hazards if stored upslope and often takes up valuable parking spaces, over time, the alternative, which would be storing snow on landscaped or grassy areas, will result in costly damage to your trees, grass, plants, or shrubs. So this requires more intensive cleanup in the spring and will eventually result in having to replace or redo landscaping, which will increase your maintenance costs. So when snow is stored on landscape, it also results in salt and other chemicals leaching into our groundwater, which is our drinking water source, as Colleen had mentioned. So we can see here these shrubs are just starting to see the impacts of that salt damage there.
Right, so now we're going to shift gears a little bit, and instead of talking about what to do for winter maintenance, we're going to be talking about not doing winter maintenance, specifically in areas that are closed during the season. So areas that are closed are not winter maintained, and access to the area is restricted. So this is a good measure to reduce the amount of salt that's applied on the property. And because no one is accessing the area, they won't slip on ice that forms. Closing areas may not be applicable for all properties, but it is something to think creatively about. So for example, if you have a commercial plaza and the busiest time of year for you is December and early January, you can think about maybe closing a portion of the parking lot in mid-January or February when there's fewer shoppers and people needing parking spaces. Or also if your tenant, if their workforce is now hybrid and they're working from home part-time, you can check in to see whether they still need all parking spaces all the time. So when deciding whether to close an area, you can think about accessibility, so how people use your site, and also any key infrastructure that needs to be accessed. So loading areas, ramps, emergency exits, and making sure that once the area is closed, these areas can still be accessed. So duplicate stairs are a good option of an area to close. They often take more time for clearing snow and are usually a priority area that has a higher level of service. So a lot of salt tends to go down on stairs. So in this example, there's a small parking area at the bottom of the stairs. And then on the other side of the building, they have a much larger parking area. So not very many people use these stairs or walkway. The property owner decided to close this area. So you can see that they have some sand down before the area was closed, and that'll make spring cleanup easier because you're no longer needing to clean up any of the sand that goes down. And also the salt that would be applied won't be corroding the handrails or the pavement as well. So the area will have a longer life before any maintenance is needed. Okay, so closed areas are something that we do on region properties where we can. This is a photo of our administrative office in Kitchener, and there's a number of walkways that go through a garden. And then in the winter, the duplicate walkways are closed. So you can see that snow and ice have been cleared up to the signs, and then after them, there's snow. And then on the other side of the walkway, there's another sign saying that the area is closed. So the area is closed all winter, whether or not there's any snow or any ice or debris or anything. So yeah, no salt is applied in this area, no snow clearing is happening. So if closing an area is something that you're interested in, the region also has closed area signs like these that you can see in the photo, and they're available at no cost. So there's a request form online, and Colleen will add the link to where you can access them in the chat. Right, so for our last example of an area to close, this is a parking lot. And you can see that they have concrete blocks around the closed area. And then they also have these bright orange signs that they've created and put in. So making it really obvious that the area is closed is important. You don't want anyone thinking that they can access the area and then possibly slip it in. So no one should be accessing this area, and so the ice hazards in it would be minimized. And then also, if you're closing a portion of parking lot, something that you can think about is whether it would be a good area to store snow because it's out of the way, and then the melting from the snow pile wouldn't cause a risk to people visiting the site.
All right. So while we often focus on the things we can do outside in terms of maintenance, winter maintenance, there are lots of important administrative measures we can do as well. So ensuring yourself, your staff, and your winter maintenance contractor have proper training to take on that winter maintenance at your property helps ensure things will go smoothly. So Smart About Salt is an online training program run by a not-for-profit organization for anyone involved with winter maintenance. It takes approximately 4 hours to complete, and it can be completed online and is full of best management practices and tips for cost saving and liability concerns. Additionally, another benefit of this training is that if your property is in Kitchener or Waterloo, you might qualify for stormwater rebates when completing a salt training program like Smart About Salt. And you can learn more about that by visiting your municipality's website, which Colleen will pop in the chat as well. So something else I wanted to chat about was record keeping. So Landscape Ontario consulted with a lawyer, and they have a really great resource, which will also be posted in the chat, called Battle of Evidence: The Side with the Best Records Often Win a Slip and Fall Lawsuit. So definitely have a review of that, but a quick summary is that the best preparation for slip and fall liability claims can be done in advance through keeping accurate and detailed documents of your winter maintenance activities for your defense. So in a slip and fall liability claim, you must be able to demonstrate that your actions met the standard of a reasonable winter maintenance contractor, and the definition of a reasonable contractor and the proof that the standard of care was met is determined by both reviewing the contract, which I'll talk about in my next slide, and the record keeping system. So winter maintenance contractors should keep a comprehensive record of any and all communications with the owner or property manager, patrol, weather, and salt application logs, GPS records, and any additional written notes. So if something came up on site that day and you jotted it down, keeping a record of that as well. So we have some record keeping templates available online from the region. So Colleen will post that link in the chat. And then finally, talking about contracts. So your winter maintenance contract is the primary source of the contractor's obligations. And in the case of a slip and fall, claim will be used to evaluate if the contractor performed the agreed upon services. So having a detailed winter maintenance contract allows you to dictate that best practices are occurring at your property. And your contract can outline many things like requiring training, keeping adequate records and logs, the level of service at various locations of your property, and the plan in place for extended cold weather periods when salt is less effective. So these contracts also dictate how salt is priced. So it's encouraged that contracts price salt on a lump sum or per season basis to avoid overusage of salt, which can be a liability concern. It can result in property damage, as we mentioned, and higher costs to the property. So Landscape Ontario also provides a sample contract online, which is another great resource that Colleen will have in the chat for you. So finally, some key takeaways from today's presentation. So walking your property to understand where ice forms and how to prevent it, identifying where to store plowed snow and prioritizing those paved surfaces with good drainage, reviewing your record keeping and contract details with your contractor, and the Region of Waterloo has resources to help you implement your winter maintenance plan. Thanks for listening.